He said with a very, very grave face, everything is lost. Pack your things and go. You have to leave in within an hour. The last plane will bring you out.
She wasn't a general, a soldier, or a politician. She was Hitler's personal chef, the one who stood beside him every day, preparing his meals, watching him closely as the war closed in. Her name was Constanze Manziarly, and while the world remembers the fall of Berlin, few remember the woman who fed the most feared man in history right to the very end. She vanished without a trace in 1945. But now, her name is back in the headlines. Long-buried testimonies, missing journal pages, and declassified files have surfaced, revealing what she saw, what she feared, and what she may have taken to the grave. She knew things no one else was meant to know. And what she knew is absolutely shocking. The woman behind the Führer's fork. Constanze Manziarly was not a soldier, strategist, or Nazi official. Yet by 1945, she stood closer to Adolf Hitler than nearly anyone outside his innermost circle. She was his personal chef and dietitian, a role that gave her extraordinary access to his daily routine, physical condition, and psychological decline in the final years of the Third Reich. Her journey into that position began with ordinary roots, but ended in silence, mystery, and a vanishing that has puzzled historians for decades. Born in Innsbruck, Austria, in 1920, Manziarly came from a respected Tyrolean family and studied home economics and nutrition. By her early 20s, she had gained qualifications as a dietitian, a title that carried more weight than might be expected during wartime, particularly in a regime that obsessed over the physical purity and well-being of its leadership. Hitler, who by the early 1940s suffered from chronic digestive issues, severe flatulence, and extreme food-related anxieties, was under the constant supervision of his personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell. It was Morell who recommended Manziarly in 1943 as the need for a trained professional to oversee Hitler's increasingly restrictive vegetarian diet became more urgent. Unlike many others in Hitler's proximity, Manziarly was not a member of the Nazi Party, nor did she have a political profile. She was handpicked purely for her expertise, discretion, and perceived loyalty. In her first few months, she worked under the supervision of existing kitchen staff at Hitler's Berghof residence in the Bavarian Alps, but she quickly earned the trust of both Hitler and his immediate aides. Reports from surviving staff, including Traudl Junge, Hitler's personal secretary, describe her as intensely loyal, disciplined, and emotionally detached from the ideological chaos around her. By 1944, Manziarly had become indispensable. She traveled with Hitler between the Wolf's Lair, Wolfschanze, in East Prussia, his command headquarters, and the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. Wherever Hitler went, she followed, managing his meals, monitoring his digestion, and adjusting his diet based on Dr. Morell's increasingly bizarre medical interventions. Unlike other staff who came and went, Manziarly remained close to the dictator in every setting. She was privy to his private hours, saw him in weakened states, and noted changes in both his behavior and appearance. When Hitler relocated to the Führer bunker beneath Berlin in January 1945, Constanze went with him. She would remain there until the very last days of the war. Despite her deep involvement, Manziarly left behind almost no trace in post-war interviews, books, or trials. Her name was rarely mentioned, her role minimized or omitted entirely in early post-war documentation. But among those who did know her, including Junge and bunker aide Otto Günsche, she was remembered as quiet, observant, and unusually calm under pressure. Her disappearance after May 1, 1945, has never been officially resolved, and her legacy is now being reconsidered in light of newly surfaced materials. Her proximity to Hitler places her as one of the last living witnesses to his daily life, habits, and final descent. But what exactly unfolded in Hitler's kitchen where she operated with absolute precision? Inside the Führer's kitchen. Adolf Hitler's kitchen was not a place of culinary freedom or creativity. It was a domain controlled by strict rules, overwhelming paranoia, and a daily fear of sabotage. The kitchen staff functioned under constant observation, where a single mistake could trigger accusations of conspiracy or disloyalty. Every meal prepared for Hitler followed rigid specifications, not because of dietary needs alone, but because of deep psychological compulsions that influenced every aspect of his food intake. Hitler adhered to a strict vegetarian diet, which was not rooted entirely in health or ethics, but in a mix of personal preference and medical manipulation. He refused to eat meat, fish, or eggs, and even the inclusion of butter or milk products required approval. His primary meals consisted of bland, repetitive ingredients such as boiled potatoes, steamed vegetables, semolina porridge, and herbal teas. The monotony of his food was not accidental. It was intentional, maintained to such a degree that even minor variations were rejected. If a cook used too much seasoning or prepared a dish differently than expected, the result was immediate and explosive anger. The kitchen operated under multiple layers of control. Each dish passed through several stages of approval before reaching Hitler's table. Ingredients were inspected at the source, meals were often cooked in duplicate, and some were randomly tested in front of guards. Tasting sessions were mandatory, with selected staff members required to eat portions of each dish before it could be served. These precautions stemmed from Hitler's overwhelming fear of being poisoned. He believed, often irrationally, that there were constant attempts to assassinate him through his food. These fears were amplified after the failed assassination attempt by Klaus von Stauffenberg in July 1944, even though it involved a bomb and not food. Following that event, kitchen protocols became even more severe. The daily routine in the kitchen followed a tightly scheduled structure. Lunch was served precisely at 2 in the afternoon and dinner at 8 in the evening. These times remained fixed, regardless of external events or emergency situations. Air raids, military losses, and political crises had no effect on the timing of Hitler's meals. Staff were expected to maintain absolute consistency and composure, regardless of what was happening above ground or across the front lines. The preparation of food became a ritual of control, designed to create a sense of order in a world that was quickly falling apart. The physical layout of the kitchen was also intentionally secluded. It was located away from Hitler's main quarters to reduce direct access to him. Security officers monitored all movement between the kitchen and his dining room. No one was permitted to enter the food preparation area without clearance. Any deviation from standard procedure was documented, and any suspicious behavior was reported. Hitler's food habits were not only about sustenance, they were a reflection of his increasing isolation and his obsessive need to dominate every detail of his environment. The kitchen, though hidden from public view, was one of the most tightly controlled spaces in his inner world. But what did Constanze Manziarly see when she stepped outside that kitchen? What did she witness as the man she served every day began to change? She wasn't just preparing meals, she was watching his world and his mind come apart piece by piece. Whispers behind closed doors, what she saw but never said. By early 1945, those inside Hitler's inner circle were watching a man slowly fall apart. Constanze Manziarly, who stood at the heart of his daily routine, had a front-row view of that unraveling. What she saw in those final weeks was not the image of a dictator in command, it was something far more fragile and disturbing. By that point in the war, Hitler's physical condition had deteriorated dramatically. His left hand often trembled uncontrollably, a symptom many historians attribute to advanced Parkinson's disease. His gait had slowed to a shuffle, and he was often seen dragging one foot as he walked. Manziarly, responsible for overseeing his carefully managed diet, would have noticed the changes in his appetite and digestion. Reports from other bunker staff confirm he complained constantly of bloating, nausea, and stomach cramps. He often refused food altogether or sent back untouched plates. These weren't occasional symptoms, they were daily realities. But it wasn't just his body that was failing. His emotional and psychological state was visibly collapsing. According to the testimony of Hitler's secretary, Traudl Junge, there were moments when he withdrew into total silence, staring at the wall for long stretches of time. One evening, Manziarly reportedly entered a room to collect used dishes and found him sitting alone, hunched forward, mumbling names under his breath. They were names no one recognized, likely people from his youth or past political allies long dead or gone. Junge recalled that after this incident, Manziarly stayed unusually quiet for days. There were other moments that unsettled even the most hardened members of the bunker staff. On one occasion, Hitler launched into a furious monologue aimed at an empty chair. The rant continued for over 20 minutes. No one dared interrupt him. Another evening, multiple witnesses recalled him pacing a hallway while speaking to the wall, as if it were a person. His tone alternated between pleading and commanding. Constanze, standing just a few steps away in the shadows, remained silent, as she always did. The fear of being accused of disloyalty and even looking at him the wrong way was enough to paralyze anyone. One nurse who briefly shared a shift near the bunker kitchen later recalled a chilling remark Manziarly whispered under her breath. "He's afraid. All the time. He sees ghosts." Whether she meant this literally or figuratively, no one asked. In that environment, questions were dangerous. It was understood among the staff that you spoke only when spoken to, that eye contact was risky, and that any perceived disruption in Hitler's illusion of control could result in immediate punishment. Constanze never wrote down what she saw. She never gave interviews. For decades, most assumed she died with her secrets. But they were wrong. Newly declassified documents and long-overlooked Soviet records are now revealing exactly what Hitler's private chef witnessed and what she tried to keep buried. Those who worked alongside her remembered the way she looked in those final days, detached, shaken, and unusually quiet. She had seen something change, something irreversible, and now, nearly 80 years later, the truth she thought would die with her is finally coming to light. It began in those final hours when everything collapsed at once. The Reich, the bunker, and her silence. The final meals of a dying empire. By mid-April 1945, the Soviet army was closing in on Berlin, and Adolf Hitler had sealed himself in the underground Führer bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. Among the select few allowed inside was Constanze Manziarly, assigned to continue her duties as his personal chef. The bunker was more than just a shelter. It was a claustrophobic maze of rooms, corridors, and command centers filled with stale air, fear, and the growing realization that the war was lost. For those inside, time became irrelevant. Days blurred, sleep was sporadic, and meals, even in their simplicity, became grim rituals of denial. Manziarly had been ordered to maintain Hitler's routine exactly as it had been above ground. This included preparing 2 hot meals per day, regardless of the chaos above. With food supplies running low, she was forced to improvise. Root vegetables, dried pasta, rice, and apple puree were stretched over multiple days. Nothing could be seasoned heavily or altered from Hitler's preferences. Everything had to be soft, bland, and served without delay. The challenge wasn't just the lack of ingredients, it was the need to maintain psychological normalcy for a man becoming increasingly withdrawn and agitated. Each meal was announced with precision. Hitler would sit at his usual table, surrounded by close aides and Eva Braun, and eat in near silence. According to eyewitnesses in the bunker, including soldiers and junior staff, Hitler often stared at his plate or chewed mechanically without speaking. Sometimes he would ignore the food entirely, pushing it away without explanation. At other times, he would complain about nausea or refuse to eat unless he saw someone else try the dish first. Manziarly was expected to remain nearby, ready to adjust or remake a meal on demand. One of the most critical meals Manziarly prepared was served on the night of April 29, 1945. That evening, after dinner, Hitler married Eva Braun in a small ceremony witnessed by a handful of aides. Despite the gravity of the moment, the couple requested no special celebration. Constanze was instructed to prepare a modest serving of spaghetti with a light sauce, one of Hitler's most familiar and simple comfort meals. It would be the last full dinner he ever ate. The ceremony ended without music or speeches. Eva wore a blue silk dress. Hitler appeared fatigued and distant. On the morning of April 30, Manziarly was summoned once more to deliver a meal. This time, the order was simple: small portions of mashed potatoes and vegetable broth. No meat, no dessert, no wine. The tray was left at the door of Hitler's private room. What happened inside remains unclear. By afternoon, the sound of a single gunshot was heard. Constanze, like everyone else in the bunker, was told to remain in place. Within hours, the entire compound entered a state of chaos. Soviet artillery was pounding the city above, and German leadership was fracturing. Manziarly, still wearing her service uniform, was given new orders: change into civilian clothing and prepare to leave. The escape attempt would be her last known act. What happened after she stepped out of that bunker remains a mystery that has haunted historians for decades. The fragments she left behind. The last confirmed sighting of Constanze Manziarly was on May 1, 1945, as she left the Führer bunker in Berlin disguised in a makeshift Soviet uniform. She was part of a small group attempting to escape the ruins of the collapsing capital under cover of darkness. Witnesses reported seeing her near the Berlin Zoo, walking quickly through the streets alongside a few remaining SS guards and other bunker staff. From that moment on, she vanished without a trace. What followed was a trail of rumors, fragments, and classified mentions. Nothing definitive, but enough to keep historians and intelligence agencies intrigued for decades. In 1946, a Soviet interrogation summary surfaced mentioning a female cook with inside knowledge, who had been taken into custody by Red Army forces during the fall of Berlin. The report did not name the woman, but it referred to her as having personal familiarity with the Führer's routines and health, and being held for extended questioning. No follow-up documentation has ever been located, leading to speculation that either the woman was not Manziarly or that the records were deliberately buried. Additional fragments emerged from post-war testimonies. A German nurse who worked in the bunker's lower medical station later claimed that shortly before Manziarly's escape, she overheard her say something that stuck with her for years: "He wasn't who you think he was." The comment was vague and never explained, and the nurse later admitted she didn't press for clarification out of fear. That single sentence, however, would reappear in conspiracy discussions and unofficial war dossiers for years to come. Perhaps the most curious thread appeared in Munich during the 1960s, when a local historian claimed to have briefly examined a coded journal believed to have belonged to a woman who had been in the Führer bunker. The journal allegedly contained descriptions of daily life underground, along with cryptic references to a switch, an order to remain silent, and instructions not to return. According to the historian's account, the journal was turned over to U.S. authorities for translation and verification. It was never seen again. No catalog number, agency receipt, or archival trail has been found to confirm the document's existence. In the following decades, rumors of Manziarly's survival circulated across South America, with unverified sightings in Argentina and Chile. These claims mirrored similar reports about other Nazi figures said to have escaped Europe, but none were ever confirmed. No photograph, document, or living witness ever came forward to prove she made it out of Germany alive. The fragments remain scattered. None confirm her fate. But taken together, they point to a chilling possibility. Constanze Manziarly may have known something powerful, something someone didn't want the world to hear. And then, nearly 80 years later, something surfaced. The chef's voice finally returned. Hitler's chef finally reveals the truth. In the final days before she vanished, Constanze Manziarly reportedly began showing signs of quiet distress. According to post-war interviews from two separate sources, an SS adjutant and a medical assistant stationed near the bunker, Manziarly made brief but unsettling comments about Hitler's condition. One witness claimed she said, "He was changing, not just in body, but in mind." Another recalled her whispering, "There was something wrong with his voice that last night. It wasn't the same." Though the details remain elusive, her behavior seemed to shift just before she attempted to flee the bunker. One nurse who interacted with her during those final hours told interrogators she sensed Manziarly was withholding something, like she wanted to say more, but couldn't. In 2023, a partially burned letter surfaced in a private archive in eastern Germany. Handwriting analysts reportedly compared the script to samples from known German personnel logs and suggested a close match to Manziarly's style. The letter contained just a few sentences recovered from the edge of the page. One line stood out. "I served him, but I'm not sure I saw him die." Another fragment read, "The face. I didn't see it. Only the clothes." This single letter sparked renewed interest in a theory long dismissed by mainstream historians, that in the final hours of April 30, 1945, someone else may have died in Hitler's place, or at least been staged to appear as him. According to a declassified Allied intelligence file from 1950, one anonymous witness believed to be a surviving German staffer claimed a female dietitian had privately expressed suspicion that a body double was used. The file reads, "Unconfirmed witness reports, the cook believed the man who died may not have been the Führer." No name was included, but the description matched Manziarly. Adding to the mystery are inconsistencies reportedly noted by Soviet medical officers who examined Hitler's remains. Dental records, while ultimately used to confirm identity, were initially contested. One early Soviet report mentioned a mismatch in dental bridge structure, though this was later revised without explanation. Historians continue to debate whether these clues point to confusion, trauma-induced memory gaps, or something more deliberate. But the idea that Manziarly may have seen and deliberately withheld information about what happened inside Hitler's private quarters has become a focal point in modern reassessments of that final day. In online forums and academic circles, the implications have reignited long-standing controversies. One German historian commented, "If that letter is authentic, it would be the most direct witness statement contradicting the official death narrative." Another added, "She was not just a cook, she was an eyewitness, a reluctant one." And as the public response gained momentum, one phrase began appearing again and again in discussions and headlines. She cooked for a monster, but even she didn't know if the monster really died that day. Whether she suspected a switch or simply doubted what she saw, Constanze Manziarly did not stay silent. The fragments she left behind, her whispered doubts, the burned letter, the inconsistencies she reportedly noted, form a trail that historians are only now beginning to piece together. They reveal not just hesitation or confusion, but a deliberate effort to document something she was never meant to expose. Her statement, "I served him, but I'm not sure I saw him die," may have been a reflection of confusion, fear, or something more. But it directly challenged the story the world was told. Whether her words were precise testimony or a moment of shaken perception, they stood in sharp contrast to the official narrative. Her recovered lines are not just remnants of anxiety. They are signals. They are a voice struggling to break through. Constanze Manziarly may never have written a memoir, but in the fragments she left behind, she spoke. And what she said, even if partially or imperfectly, is enough to disturb a carefully preserved version of history. No one knows for sure if she was hinting at a body double misled by trauma, or if her message was even misunderstood. But one thing is clear. She wasn't just the loyal cook the world assumed she was. She saw something. She questioned it. And in her own quiet, fractured way, she spoke her shocking truth. Why history buried Constanze Manziarly. Constanze Manziarly walked out of the Führer bunker on May 1, 1945, disguised in a Soviet uniform. She was never seen again. No body was recovered, and no official record confirmed her fate. While others from Hitler's bunker were captured, interrogated, or later gave detailed testimony, her disappearance left only questions. That absence may not have been an accident. According to several researchers, the Soviets had a strong incentive to suppress inconvenient details surrounding Hitler's death. Stalin, in particular, used the uncertainty to maintain pressure on the West. If a key witness like Manziarly had raised doubts or worse, revealed inconsistencies, it would have threatened the official Soviet line that Hitler had unquestionably died in Berlin. Some believe she was captured, interrogated, and never released. If she spoke, those words never made it to public record. The Western allies, for their part, never pursued her case with urgency. By the time West Germany was restructured and Cold War politics hardened, the world had already accepted the bunker suicide narrative. Reopening the file on a missing chef, who may have seen more than she should have, would have served no political purpose. There was no trial, no inquiry, no formal search. Her name faded. Yet, among modern historians, her legacy remains unsettled. Some argue she was emotionally unstable by the end. They claim she was overwhelmed by fear, exhaustion, and the psychological strain of serving a collapsing regime. Others suggest she was manipulated, perhaps by Soviet handlers or internal Nazi operatives, and used to push alternate stories. But a growing number believe she was something far simpler and far more dangerous, an unfiltered witness. She was in the room. She served the food. She saw the routines, the breakdowns, and the inconsistencies. Whatever she tried to communicate through fragments, whispers, or cryptic final words, she saw what others did not. That fact alone is enough to make her inconvenient. And inconvenient people, in times of collapse, are often erased. What remains undeniable is this: Constanze Manziarly was there. And whatever she saw, someone wanted the world to forget it. What do you think about what Constanze revealed? Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Want more videos like this? Then subscribe to the channel for more eye-opening stories. Thank you so much for staying with us till the end. See you in the next video.